So Rinpoche, welcome back to London. Welcome back to Jamyang. We're so thrilled and grateful that you have returned and that you are with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. Angelo Bachina and Jambalak sauce. Giant choose on the yard. The pebble, Jambalak sauce, cutting cheese.
And so today is a very auspicious day because it's the first day of Sakadawa. And so for us here, you have appeared on a most auspicious day. So thank you again. And so
that's all.
And we're so happy that Venerable Shon is translating today. So, Rinpoche.
Sorry.
So, Rinpoche, tonight in this room, we have representatives of 9 organizations. And thanks to you being here, you've brought us all together. So we've got translators, we've got volunteers, we've got friends and benefactors, and we've got center directors and spiritual program directors, and we've got founders of some of these organizations. And so for us, it's such a privilege to be in this intimate room together with you on this auspicious day. So I have with me Dan, who's from Rigpa, UK, and Rinpoche, again, you bring us together in harmony, and so for that too we want to say thank you. And so now I'm going to pass on to Dan.
Yes.
Good luck.
Hiya. Yeah.
Rinpoche, thank you. I don't have so much to say. Your laughter needs no translation. It's already so precious to be here and to be here very much together as one Dharma family, brothers and sisters, all together as practitioners, but also, as Anidroma said, people who hold the whole thing together. Without us here, we are so fortunate to be able to contribute, and we feel deep appreciation to be in this family together and to receive your presence as a family, welcoming you. Thank you.
Lasso Ani Samalola Banning Tawani Tashidele, Jui.
So at the outset of our time together, I'd like to greet you and offer Teshidele.
Deni, Dangazo Lama, Zachimbo, Chulurismachi, Lama, Zachimbo, Ge, Deni, that Chuzo, Tumi, and Chenamba Samalo, Chuzo Mandawa, Goods and Zomere, Sungso, and it been Missy Katinche.
And you're at pains to mention that representatives from 9 different Dharma centers have gathered here. And so as you are all disciples of very qualified teachers, I'm very happy that you've kind of gone out of your way to all gather in one place and kind of like, as Dan mentioned, as a family. So I think that is something that is extremely wonderful and brilliant.
How about the Sakadawa, Tujen, Cheparji, the line, also Tendenzoyantia, and pay Zachimbushirazi.
And as you know, we are all the followers of Buddhism of the Himalayan regions, or Tibetan tradition, if you will. And for all of us, the 4th month of the lunar calendar, Sakadawa, is an extremely important time. And so, as Dharma mentioned at the beginning, to be gathered here on the first day of Sakadawa is something extremely auspicious and wondrous.
Je, that Tangbongazo, Katsugi, Dumbalana Mewa, Zambuling Tina, Tenchu Mambo, Dumba Mambo Uni, Lana Meva, Tinjungi te Konani, and Be, Genda the Cheva, Zachimbo, Sungdeniji, and Mazo, Karsurta, Sanji, Jumdendi, and Getu, and Kungi, Gombaji Zungi, Dangazo, Kajuro, Kang Tubdugi. And that Digilam, Shajucheva in Zang, Tangwadi, and Mazo, Tai, Simja Tam, Jeji, Tundula, Gunola Nameva, and Rang Dravaji, and Ji, Dongema Devata, Devan Devandi, and then draw Ritu, number Kun, Jixung in Zang, Detamjilo, Devat Devan Devata, Dongema Deva. Yina yang de tsamalo maranzu naiji deni turne da korbala yang korba yinza de tamjene ani sanje chomdendeji lam lanamewi de khonani de selwa chiya dang de 도버치 체들라 semjen 탐지 산지지 공부를 뭐지 토비 체들라 아니 가서 드린 다 춘제라바 있는다 니시 지 가서로 당시 라바 있는다 아니 다 군주 숨되지 아니 개뚝 라바 있는다 가서 돌림 라바 있는다 안데 참마로와 담부데라 아니 그런 남바라 타바지 설답 아니 지 잠님 대자 마임바 아니 다 잠니 치와타데 가리요 나메나 강다라 동해만되위 셈제 아니 뒤숨나 니데위 셈제 탐제 산제지 공부를 무지 더바쇼 제네 아니 소소기 참말로 출발해도 아니 그런 남바라 타바지 셀담네 안 탐보 산제 주스마 마 지소라나스 산티니 가서 트레이닝 지고스
So in the month of the 4th month according to the lunar calendar, Sakadawa. So that time we recall our teacher, the Buddha. Generally when we use the expression my teacher, a teacher, etc. When we reflect on the world within which we find ourselves, there are many teachers. What is unique about the Buddha, the awakened one, can be understood through his teaching. We find, as mentioned, that these myriad teachers, they give spiritual instruction, but the only one that reveals the mutually dependent nature of things, the suchness, if you like, of things, is a Buddha. And so when we reflect on what makes the Buddha awake, it is this understanding brought to perfection. And when we think of ourselves as followers or disciples of the Buddha, it should be then this understanding that we not only try to cultivate within ourselves, but it is that we should try to perfect within ourselves. Because we, each and every one of us, would like to achieve the state of awakening. We would like to become Buddha. It is for that reason that we follow the teaching of the Buddha, that we consider ourselves a Buddhist. And so we have understood the unique characteristics of our teacher. And so then what follows is not only the receiving of that instruction, but is also to put that into practice, to kind of train our minds, to wake up, if you will, from the slumber of confusion. But what should motivate us in this? What should be the fuel of our endeavor? It is the wish to bring about benefit for all sentient beings. Why? Each and every sentient being is the same as ourselves. How? If we reflect inwardly, we are an individual who would like to be in a situation of comfort, would like to be free of discomfort. In other words, we may like to have pleasure and avoid pain. In just the same way, all sentient beings would like to experience happiness and comfort without the slightest need for pain and discomfort. Now, if we reflect upon the realms of beings, so generally within, as you know, the teaching of the Buddha, there are 6. No matter where, no matter how, no matter what form sentient beings are born within, that wish to avoid discomfort, suffering, if you will, dissatisfaction, if you prefer, is the same. Now, what distinguishes us at this moment is that we have the opportunity afforded us through the kindness of our teacher, the Buddha. We have the ability to, rather than look outside of ourselves thereby the faith, following kind of sense pleasure and so forth, whatever form that may take. We have the ability to look within ourselves, to see ourselves in the state of slumber, and then to understand what it means to wake up, to become Buddha. And we have this because Buddha has kindly taught the path. So when it comes to putting the path into practice, it is essential that we are motivated by this wish to awaken completely, so as to bring about the full awakening of all sentient beings. And so I implore you, at the beginning of our time together, this juncture, as much as you are able, please bring this attitude to the forefront of your being, and motivated thereby, then we can have this kind of dharma connection, if you will, meeting, if you prefer, teaching, if you will, however you like to phrase it. Before we engage it, before we start it, please reflect on sentient beings. Not just sentient beings that we perceive with our eyes, humans and animals, whatever their form, whatever their kind of shape, whatever their aspect. But reflect on, as we hear about in the teachings of the Greater Vehicle, the myriad realms within which sentient beings exist. Bring all of them to mind. Similarly, bring sentient beings to mind using time, reflecting on sentient beings of the past, present, and the future, wherever they may be in the moment. They are all the same as we are. They wish to abide free of dissatisfaction, in happiness, if you will, free of discomfort. And in order to put each and every one of them, without the slightest exception, in that state, reflect how I'm going to engage in this activity, this kind of dharma teaching, if you will, so as to bring about my own awakening, with the motivation that through awakening, I'll be able to be in the best position to awaken each and every sentient being. And so with that motivation, then we'll begin with the repetition of the usual prayer of taking refuge in the three jewels, and thereafter the generation of the awakening mind. Sangye che
Sanje chedan soje chonam la janjo badu dani gasu Tani chiso jibe sonam je dola penche sanje duhai shu Sanje chedan soje chonam la janjo badu dani gasu
Tani chiso jibe sonam je dola penche sanje duhai shu Sanje chedan songye chonam la Chanchu badu dani kapsu chi Dagi chunye kipe sonam Drola penche sangye drupa shu
Ngangin tuzen ni zoye dawa tamche pangwe che tampe che nen tuen zenpe kwa tamde la cha ze lo Tuni ninje zong zang juwe lang chi chi sen ze khan je ten zheng ge chang lang pe mo ten ze So wan de zo da ju chin je lo Mo nang ga da nyam pe sim jen tam je dong en jen zhen jen dan jen So pe san jen je hong po rin po jen To pe che tam pe che zong meng de nyam se long chou Lasso, Deni, Dang, Chen number Samalo, Chuba Zachimbo, Dicala Labardo, Dino, number down, Jima number Zachimbo, and Telayova. Sonzang, then Gadi, Yaji Kens Aurasin, Dejero, Dangazo Sanji Chu, La Dushi, Layatang, Be, Simnani, Dumba, Dushi, Juyagi. Zachimbo, Nijisongi doa, Deinzane, de la Yube, Anji, Sembata, Sema, Chanju, Sembata, Sema, Tini, Kenonda, Zachimbo, Ngai Lata Samalo, Tenijia, nangalaya yoga sambachin. Tini ngata nyamba chonga tini sine dia sambachin. Tini ngaso ye karju guru ta chuji drawing da sine. Tini ki kurong chiki. Ya di machina ngati ko sa ro ngata member ro.
So once again, kind of to remind myself and also all of you, reflecting thus as far as space extends, existing within that space are countless. Hello? Can you hear at the back? Yeah? So as to remind myself and also you at the beginning, kindly reflect as far as space extends, there are countless individuals in the state of dukkha or suffering, as some prefer to say it. In order to liberate each and every one of them from that state, I myself must achieve the state of complete and perfect awakening, and in order to do so, initially I need to receive a Dharma teaching, but more importantly, having received the Dharma teaching, to then put it into single-pointed practice, so as to awaken, to thereby awaken for the benefit of all sentient beings. And so all of you are students or disciples of impressive, extraordinary teachers, lamas or gurus, however you like to phrase it. In addition, and you have a lot of monastics, male and female. And so in a way, I feel a little bit strange kind of sitting here, talking about the Dharma. But when we consider the point of the Dharma teaching is to transform or to train our mind, when we understand it from that kind of perspective, then we kind of gather together as kind of Dharma people, Buddhists if you will, practitioners if you prefer. It is important to kind of set ourselves up correctly at the beginning of our time together. In other words, to adjust our motivation, correct our attitude, if you will. And so I'm sure that gathered here are many who aspire to the highest awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. Many bodhisattvas, both male and female. There are, as you can see, many monastics, both male and female. And so I'm thinking that together, all of us have the same intention to awaken. So when I kind of view all of you in this kind of light of being awakened or aspiring to awakening and have entered into that path, then I save myself the sin, if you like, the demerit, if you prefer, of sitting on the Dharma throne and pretending to teach, because I'm, as you know, just an ordinary person, right?
That makes it. I think as a thing, chulu, changmalo, and in Zonyade, Shinden Bay, Kitchenbodang, and Jigre Tingdo, Kainsan as a number Sanji, Chubazina, Chulu Kandi in Selena, Yamana as a Nima, Yamana Gelu, Yamana Gachu, Yamana Saja, Labdena, go Kinsa, that rarity. That's also Buddhism. Sanji Jomde Chulu, Silana, Kariri. Only Kunduzade, Tajaji Tomba, Sanji Jomde Churi Dera. And Sanji Jomde Diki Chede, Hamazo Namba Zamzi Maimba. Draw Kula, go yo devaji. Draw Kungi Chui in devaji. Kainsena, Tenichi Chu Cheyagi, Anichi Karto Chu de Yang. 아니 이 가라이나 이 템바니 랑이가나 랑탑시니 리고 꾸니 라야디 용수조바 꾸라 아니 찹대바지다 꾸나 그거요바지 시 템바니 나니 이나양 근접 템바당 전담 템바나라 만디바 추지 메데바지리 들어와 뒤숨기 아니 산제다 전주선바 샘진 가야 중하라 아니 직체와 이나 아니 시템바니나 만두가 매바 손장 시템바니 남 탑시니 소용들 되니 맞아 다 추 라야디 아니 따와 띵중 대코나니 쩌바 차바매와 되니데 인자니 아니 람대양 안 탑다 시럽라도 탑라나 아니 용수조바 근접이 최 참말로 잔주기 셈기 토네 냠내지 거야지 돈도 줘 거야지 냠내지 거야지 단담배 아니 토네 아니지 가르쳐로고다 시럽이 차네 아니 잔주기 셈 아니 롱 쪄샤데 롱 쪄샤다 롱 쪄낸다 롱 쪄 용수 조바디 아니 랑지 니루암 코랑이 랑지양 댐바 장부 뭐니지 또 돼야 되라 아니 띵중기 대 코나니 소용데 꾸나 잡대와지 꾸나 쌀대와지 묘모 용수 조바 꾸기 묘모 용수 조바 쌀대와지 가인세나 묘모 참말로와 아니 띵중기 대 코나니 마통링 아니 맞죠 몽수로와 띵중기 대 코나니 딥시데 수레스나 당진 말이봐 최 탐지 이제 니 마통이 토네 아니 트스도 왕서 되니 말이봐 왕기 트드도 아니 대차 세당 디목 낙심 뇌심 lok다 라 소바지기 아니 제 땀네 아니 코르발라 뒤기 차니 코르발라 양세 제네 내라양 아니 고 박차 제 레다 뉴몬베 박샤라네 드리지기 땡네 자와인데 내 참말로 설바치야담 디기 초르바 동이 제연적이 아니지 탑나 초바 용수 초바 매봐줘야지 띵lun기 때 코나니지 제송와 이나 장축라에게 아니 자치무지 뉴모 용수 초바 아니 배 정화치대야 매봐줘도야 싸와니 매봐줘도야 근데 뉴모 매봐줘서나 코르비 짜와줘야 코르비 짜와줘 뉴모데 매서나 랑게 되니 초바 동이 라야디 남이야 매봐지 자기도 와 대송장 제가 첨부린도 와 아니 딘디게 탑 시럽라나 매봐 남 준도 가서 되니 따와 친질로 왔다 쪄바 친질로 되니기 뒤 준도 몽 되니기 따와 친질로 와 쪄바 친질로 와 따와 친질 말로 와 되니 양답에 따와 니룩 치마치지 오늘 네니스 시에디한테 따와 친질 말로 와 인장 딩가서 람라 아니 베테 람지 가르조르다 자친부지 줘야라 디 마시나 탐해버지리도 람양사본 로트서 말봐 따와디 친질로 송이나 안 쪄바 친질로가 다 주변으로서 따와디 친질 말로 와이나 아니 쪄바 정축 셈 라야디 아니 배 할리비지 랍심부 할리비 된다데 맞아 되니 쪄바 친질 말로 와지 잔주기 셈 라야 되니 자친부 조연지 오늘 전에 아니지 근접이 전주 세미나 전남 전주 세미나다 한달 되니 용수 쪽바데 따와 친지로 돼야다 쪄바 친지로 돼야 디파로 쥐네 최제라래 최대 디파 쥐네 따와 친지 말로와 땡중기 때 콘나니 자무똥바니 라와이나다 양탑에다 라와이나다 니리 좀센다 템바 라와이나다 디토고기도 다 쥐바체바 메바스 라와이나 아니 지 남준도 가서 따와 친지로 니중안에 아 쥐바 친지로 아니 따와디 빼 메시 가르쳐로다 쥐 탐지네 아니지 템바 마주바 이나니 템바 주바 저버지 야 켈레 미다발라 딱바 켈레 동네랑이나 대화 켈레 미자발라 장마 켈레네 덴디스네 출대와 송장 디 정말 출샤디 하고네 쥐바 체험해봐 제바이나 아니 장주기 셈대야 체메와 아니 저는게 되는지 셈전 탐지의 동에 만들어 대화 되비 셈진 요도줘라 아니 셈 상배도니 점진다 땜비 장배도니 안디 참말로 아니 타르바타 탐지 쳔바 셀라병데 아니 타르바 셀라디 아니 저 탐지 니룩데 ton도 니소나 타르바토 주기도와 탐지 쳔베 공방은 직토고와 있나 아니 가지기 아니 셈데 짜쳔보 고양보 쿠르쳔보 겐쳔보 셈제 탐지도 아니 베 제와 닌제 데즈디 공방베네 데니 파친 tru디야 지 냠네 지용도 아니 가서 짜쳔보 시우린도와 제장 남탑시니 데부꾸니 아니 넘버 준비 주고다 주고 데리지 톱자 데리지 여와 송장 넘버 상지비 추 데 가서 시에네 타바토네 아니 로바이나 아니 가서 지 출루 릭스 마치바 다별 강제지 좀나 자가 팍배윤의 별 강제 좀나 봐 다른 감지 인간에 아니지 닝마 사자가 주리면서 데리지 다른 감지 돈에 송어를 마도 다르주 줘야 돼 아니 이제 된반 남탑시니 지부꾼이 산지 좀 된디 송이하고 다른 인바 인정 뭐 빼대 가져올 때 튠제 집어 맞지 직송 집어도 빼 개점 버려 네 맞이나 차방 장장 펼소나 빼갈래 가버려 놔 저 직인데 마 다이
One thing that is, I think, worthy of mention, a special thing, if you like, is that, as has been mentioned by our hosts, in the room there are gathered the representatives of different dharma organizations, centers, if you will. Now, when we consider, as was mentioned, what kind of binds us, what is the kind of common denominator, if you will, between us, is that we're all kind of followers of the Buddha. We consider ourselves Buddhist. And so it is this that should really be at the kind of forefront of our attitude. If we kind of forget this, and we say, for example, oh, I'm a follower of Nyingmapa tradition, Gelugpa tradition, Sakya tradition, Kagyu tradition, etc. And in a way that becomes more important than one being a kind of follower of the Buddha, a practitioner, if you will, of the Buddhist teaching, a Buddhist, if you will. Then in a way we've kind of fallen a little bit out of sync with the way of things. So when we consider ourselves as a follower of the Buddha, what does it actually mean? We think I'm a Buddhist, I follow the Buddha, but really a Buddhist is a person who practices the instructions or the teachings, if you like, of the Buddha, the dharma, if you will. And we should consider this in the light of what the dharma actually means. Because when we think about practicing the dharma, the reason for it is to kind of awaken ourselves, to become Buddha, if you like, and thereby to benefit all sentient beings. So we have this opportunity now. But if we look around us, not everybody has this opportunity. Even though each and every sentient being kind of needs this. But at the moment, perhaps, it is somewhat obscured for all beings. And the reason they need this is not so that we kind of count numbers of Buddhists, etc. It is for the following kind of reasons. Generally, when we talk about the teaching of the Buddha, we can do so in terms of ground, path, and fruition. We talk of the kind of ground or the base, foundation, if you like. We can explain it in terms of the two truths, relative and ultimate. When it comes to the kind of implementation of those truths, both ultimate and both relative and ultimate, we do that through the method or the means that we call method and wisdom. And as a result of the thorough implementation of method and wisdom, what is rendered evident is the resultant state of the two kind of dimensions or kayas, bodies if you like, of the awakened one, Buddha. And so when we reflect on the ground, the starting point, if you will, therein, as mentioned, there are the two truths, relative truth and the ultimate truth. And everything is included within that, whether it be animate or inanimate. All sentient beings, the various world spheres within which they find themselves, are included within the relative truth, aren't they? And what allows the relative truth to unfold is the ultimate truth, the nature of things. So when we reflect upon all sentient beings are included within these two truths. When we reflect again upon the two truths, they're included in the relative truth. They appear to us and we interact with them. Now the digesting, when it comes to the digesting of the two truths, we talk of method and wisdom. Now when we think about wisdom, which is or should be paramount, we talk then of the mutually dependent nature of things, the suchness of things, simply the way things are, which is mutually dependent. And then we consider, in a way, method. How, having digested, having implemented and embodying understanding of suchness, how does this affect the way that we interact with others? So as a Buddhist person, we can talk of the kind of conduct is to avoid harming others. And this can be understood in relative and ultimate kind of ways. However, when we consider the two, the method and wisdom, so wisdom, suchness, the way of things, and then the method, the digesting of that, conduct, avoiding harming others. This is something that is understood in a way through the implementation of method, through the implementation of wisdom, then the understanding of method is understood. Through understanding of the ultimate nature, the relative, the appearing mutually interdependent world as it is becomes obvious. Thereby, Bodhicitta, the wish to awaken for the sake of all sentient beings, becomes something that is possible because we see a way through the kind of misconception that we have of the way things appear to us. And so, when we talk of developing the wish to awaken, the ability to awaken comes through our understanding of wisdom. Wisdom is then the expression of our understanding of the ultimate truth. So ultimate bodhicitta, if you will. So it is only with this ultimate bodhicitta that relative bodhicitta can really be understood. So we need to understand in a way, when we reflect upon our attitude, bodhicitta means the aspiration to awaken. So we can consider this in terms of the agent, the action, and the object. We would like to awaken by engaging a path to achieve something. But all of these three things are mutually dependent, aren't they? They're mutually dependent, and as such, they lack independence. And so this is an extremely important point. When we consider how things lack independent, autonomous, existing from its own side-ness, if you will. So when we consider this, it's important to understand that this is simply the way of things. Now, when we consider the attitude to awaken, it is in and of itself within the relative world, therefore it is mutually dependent. Similarly, when we consider afflictive mental states, negative emotions if you prefer, these are similarly without or devoid of autonomous, independent existence. It is our lack of understanding that these afflictive emotions or mental states are interdependent that is called then the fundamental distortion of reality. To put it another way, ignorance. And it is this kind of misunderstanding, and more's the point, our kind of addiction, or rather holding to this misunderstanding as something truly existent, that kind of causes us to see things in a way that they simply don't exist. And based thereupon, we kind of react. And reacting, we like some things and try to pull that towards us, and we dislike other things, we try to push that away, because we see that which we like as existing autonomously over there, and we think that through projecting autonomy onto it, if we pull it towards us, it will somehow increase our well-being. And it is exactly the same for something that we don't like. We see that thing that we don't like kind of existing autonomously over there, and we think that by pushing it away, that it will somehow relieve us of an imagined discomfort. And based thereupon, we have other afflictive mental states that arise, and we can enumerate them in all kinds of ways. But essentially, if we put them all together, we say that this is the contaminant. When we talk of the word samsara, it means continually rotating under the influence of this contaminant. And by doing so, we gain familiarity. We get habituated with that. It's something that becomes the norm for us. Based upon that, or under its influence, we engage action. And as you know, for every action there is a reaction, an effect. And it is based upon that when we experience these effects. These effects that we experience do not bring us any stable pleasure. Rather, they are temporary. They are momentary. Our experience of them passes, whether we would like it to or otherwise. And this is what is meant by the word dukkha. Being unable to, under the influence of this contaminant, enjoy any lasting or enduring satisfaction. So when we understand the nature of things, and we understand that we can reverse this through simply seeing things as they are, thereby we see that it's possible to come out from under the influence of these destructive or negative kind of mental traits. By doing so, then what we achieve is the resultant state, which is simply the mind purified of these mistaken ways of viewing the world and our reaction or addiction thereto. When we understand at this point, we understand how the nature of things is distorted. We understand then that this distortion can be reversed. And if this distortion, this ignorance if you like, is reversed, what happens then is we simply see things as they are. And when that is brought to its kind of resultant state, then this is the experience that is known as kind of awakening. Through engaging with the two levels of truth, in terms of the actual method and the wisdom, this is then the way or the means of uprooting and thoroughly ridding ourselves of the experience of dukkha. This is something that we can do. If we understand the nature of things, if we develop this within us and have wisdom, it is under that influence that we engage perfectly in positive conduct. So we talk of, in general, the Buddhist view is of mutual dependence or dependent arising. And the conduct which arises therefrom is one of avoiding harming others. We see the benefit of that through understanding the nature of things, the wisdom of things, if you like. In terms of the actual kind of way of interacting with things, that is to say, when it comes to putting this wisdom into practice, which is what we call the path. The path here then is the digesting, the understanding, and the thorough familiarity with simply the way things are. And when we've understood that, what arises from that is this perfect kind of Buddhist conduct. But this perfect Buddhist conduct is of avoiding harming others, etc., is really not possible unless this wisdom aspect is fully digested. So when we talk of bodhicitta, the wish to awaken, it is possible for us to awaken, but unless we know how it is possible because what we call samsara is simply an illusion, and it is something that, if we understand its nature, it can be reversed. If we understand that perfectly, then our conduct, within which we avoid others, avoid harming others, within which we avoid kind of harming others, becomes perfected. The attitude within which we say, okay, I'm going to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, becomes perfect because we see then the true kind of nature of things. This is what makes kind of bodhicitta something very special, this wisdom aspect. So it is extremely important to understand the ultimate, or bodhicitta in its ultimate aspect, ultimate bodhicitta, if you will, and thereby to understand then how, therefore, conventionally things exist. Thereby, it is said that one understands the relative truth, or the conventional truth. Truth is convention, if you will, through understanding the ultimate truth. Indeed, if you would like to look at the Tibetan word, the meaning of relative means that which obscures the ultimate. That's its function, to obscure the ultimate. And so it is important then to, as a follower of the Buddha, adjust our motivation to see the true nature of things. So how do we like to engage that word? The true nature of things, the ultimate nature of things, the mutually dependent nature of things, the dependently arisen nature of things, the empty nature of things. This is all this kind of word choice. Ultimately, it refers to seeing things as they are. When we see things as they are properly, then under the influence of that, that is to say, as kind of to digesting it, what shines forth in terms of one's conduct, physical, verbal, mental, etc., is a genuine avoidance of harming others. At this point, the relative world, or one's conduct, if you like, becomes clear, and in a way, it becomes perfected through the understanding of wisdom. Now, again, to look at this in stages, to look at how confusion arises. Generally, we can talk of confusion in myriad ways, but in terms of the Buddhist practice, we can talk of three kind of projections of understanding in a way that are completely fictitious. We project a sense of permanence onto that which is by its very nature changing, impermanent. In terms of the experience thereof, we project a sense of enduring satisfaction when the nature of things is fleeting, as such dukkha, not able to give us enduring or lasting satisfaction. And ultimately then, we talk of the mutually dependent nature of things, the empty nature of things. But rather than see that, we project a sense of autonomy onto the ultimate nature of things and act under its influence. In other words, we project a sense of autonomy onto that which is completely void or empty of autonomous, independent existence. And reifying that, we engage in action. And so, in a way, it is important to understand these three kind of misunderstandings, if you like, these three these fictitious approaches, if you will. Understanding that subjectively, when you then bother to look at sentient beings, we can understand their plight a little bit better. It's very easy to say, for the sake of all sentient beings, but why? How do we interact with sentient beings? What do we need to do to sentient beings in order to get them to kind of see simply the nature of things? What is it that propels sentient beings? If we understand this using ourselves as the subject, we will understand that it is this fundamental distortion or confusion concerning reality. As I mentioned, based thereupon, we encourage, or we kind of develop afflictive states of mind, emotion, which lead to action. And then we experience the results of those actions again and again and again. And this builds up. And so, accordingly, what is important is to reflect upon the nature of things. If we think about how we want to kind of get rid of all of the problems that we experience in the world, all of them stem from this fundamental confusion. And when we see that in ourselves, with ourselves as a subject, if you will, then it's relatively easy to see that in others. Thereby, from within that understanding, a genuine compassion arises for the first time. It kind of wells up from within. And based thereupon, we're able to properly engage in what are known as the 6 perfect actions, the 6 perfections or paramitas, if you will, for the first time. Then the practice of these 6 perfections really begins. Understanding this, then, we understand the relative world and also its nature. We understand that we're engaging in these practices, and thereby we will perfect our mind, thoroughly ridding this basal or foundational kind of distortion, this fundamental distortion of reality. The result of purifying our mind thereof is then the Dhammakaya. And that which appears therefrom is then the form kaya, the resultant state of the 2 kayas. So when we reflect upon within ground, path, and fruition, the ground of the 2 truths, and then the path of method and wisdom, and then the resultant state of the truth and the kind of form dimensions of awakening, if you will. This then is the genuine conduct, or the genuine practice, if you like, of anyone who considers himself a follower of the Buddha. This was how it was in the noble land of India, and this is how it was in the land of snows, Tibet. So what is important is to kind of forget the packaging, if you like, of the tradition, whether it be Nyingma, Gelug, whatever. What is important is to understand the kind of fundamental teaching of the Buddha, to understand that to the point where you're able to put it into practice such that it brings that kind of result that we would like. In other words, to understand the ground, path, and fruition, the digesting of which makes one a follower of the Buddha, of somebody who is striving to achieve the same status or the same state of awakening as the Buddha.
Nga tsu kemo tsu kela mada ni kuru nga laso teni ge da tawa tsa chimbo da joba tsa chimbo di ani nga tsu ge nyamsu linin di nga tsu sure sana ta su tonan chi korwa ani ji tenjo ji milu rumbu chen lani luten di tsa chimbo imba nhập 많이 봐. 아니 가르쳐로다 된졸 좁지 라이기 상 미상 따야다. 된졸지 물리를 보지 라야디 이게 띵네 아니지 데려바다 저러바다 저간에 내용도 가르쳐로다 지 람르는 채나마 칭기라와 람름 상마지 봐 사자간이 리서 마지 아니지 가르쳐 된졸니가와 쳔메다바 레이전제 다르비 페인 신이 된지 라소버드지 참말로 아니 추 가르쳐로다 지고야 짜침부임이 좀제 조보 마치와이나 아니 집합니다베 자네는 뱀시 가르쳐로다 직소서 진료캔로 아니 마치와이나 아니 지 레이전제 까나 로아메베 니주 인자는 디비토니나 다니 오늘 자네 다 주지야 다 주야다 지고이 좀제나 아니 대양 양타고지 지야랑 아주 심지리 감이 야다 체스지 매너 디그 말아봐 되는 신이도 댐비지 자벨라마 라마 자치무지 아니 가르쳐 때 다르바다 탐지 준비 공말라 아니지 들어발라 아니지 아랑 단다바지 심지 가야 메시니 지기 다르바다 탐지 준비 공말 로트고 말아봐 가서 주벨로기 짐벨로 아니 심벨로 당신다 랑지지니 시간에 다르바다 탐지 준비 공말 로트고 말아봐 아니 디 밤에도 비시라다 진진진이 중간에 고숨데 자와 개발을 컨디스트려 보면 고숨데 아니 문진 제당 되는지 타르바다 탐지 준비 공방라 되게 거의 뉴스기 레체바이나 아니 배 된체바 라야시 좀제 니가비 좀제 된체비 좀제 주부 마치는 쳔미다비 좀제 되는지 내양 양양 체가와 단주지 물리를 못지데 니가비 내중간에 달래 아니지 덤바스 쳔마 산지 좀 된데 무슨 제요 저도장 저 이진도 주베다 덴지 집탐 릭스 마주베 자침부 데레 덴주 쳔마 세지 리지라 아니 당아용서 산지야지 자침부 내지 제대와 아니 디 드니지 물리를 못지 톱대와 아니 제 왕보 상대와 로출에 초대와다 한데 좀제 마무지 띵네 아니 자침부터 통과해 계시 모르도와 내가 저거 마시나 아니지 지쟁님이 아니지 남시다 안디지 학벌설라 단다이나다 중지 진종아지 아니지 니스 아니 낭 내목촉서 용수조비 띵네 아니 가서 집에 지는데 망 숨비 지는데 뇽 임바 인장 되니 뒤수 퉁퉁 되게 나라 아니 내발던 줘보세도 거야지 대 인자네 대인상부 대양 초이 체들라 된지 또 그땀 라소버디하고 초이 체들라 아니 지 맞아 그거를 또 거를 내만 거를 초진 잠증마도 짜쳐모 진지야 시비 분조대 짜쳐모 진진송아이나 아니 타만데라 동네베랑이 아니 마치랑 아니지 루치오라 아니 가르죠다지 메세 똥세 던로네 루치오라 마세 녜손숨시 아니지 주산도 년가도지 여들어봐 대송자 되니 미치지기 나라 드림마 제바이나 알로 자이나네 시도와 타취버리 디나네 아니지 다르바다 탐지진비 공방 짜침부지 랑가 여대반디 아니 베티 믹스해서 던드니야지 내양 다르바다 탐지진비 공방서야 내양 아니지 칠올라지 제주치네 짜침부지 누구치야 마임바 아니 다르바다 탐지진비 라야디 낭 심지 랑지 산지 좀 되나 좀 된디지 아니 가들 숨어와 심지는 산지데 엔절로 테미트 테마 테슬 산지니 들이 숨어와 테 인자는 상지지 라야기 아니지 공방 주야기 줍차 로고르디야 전주기 셈다 돈이다 봤지 아니 톱샤디야 감 대신님 심 참오디 뉴모다 얘는 망거봐 맞추르니 덴디기 시럽 피도 주면 인지 피도 주면 zonju기 랑당지 심이라지 요새가 저기 빼자지면서 용되기도 와 덴디지 가서기 아니지 다 톱절라는 매 봐서 인장 다 또고다 인다 아니 ngazogi jigdengi lojongda tohu tizudi kora nikab lada pindochiya wangbu rakpala kora ta dela pindochiya zi gogruwa di tsamzi re mato tsawe dani ngazogi topjala na mewade ani semi rangjinde khandiredo rangjungi semde ani di zi ha khosongayina dani chi gom nyamle lawayinandra lojong lawayinandra ta be tsachimbuge choyi 아니 제 중봉 제제제선 짜침 땅아서 할레베도와 대상말로와 가리체들이 나초지 탈뚝이 랑이 셈 예시된 거 줘야지 디 문도 줘야지 디 문도 줘야 체들라 안가서기 자와창하지 다디 문도 체도 인바 인상 아니 디 것이 거와 디뭐 마시바이나 아니 또그 담직 기고 나는 도바이나 시비 분석할 아니 고커 대바이나 아니 가서 지 왕부 rak바지 조유장 지 공유 왕부 이게 대뚝장 지게 좋아냐네 대뚝장 지게 드울라 레도 제바이나 아니 가서 할레비기 너주침부지 디에니 가져로다 가서 통취지 둔도다 그래서 찍버더버지들와 미다 둔도 찍버차로 그래 계산 미시럽다 남주라야 돼 피도 중앙지 배주 땅 투비알라 아니 시럽 피도 중앙 인지 피도 중앙 쓸라네 내야 좀 전에 된 바지리더와 맞아 남준도 로종 자와 용서가 시럽직 자와 지그래 아니 이제 여들이 뒤준도 랑윤이 맞아 이게 셈바 장보 미참말로 미디 장보 연대지 여들이 순저지 있나 심지 순저지 있나 코란 랑실라 그 장보 연대지 여들이 이는데 최신들이 들어와 딜리티는 최신데이나 아주 짐바다야 저 저바지야 삼대지야지 망보지 다 망보지 여들어와 배뜨서 딘주 이나야 표도 중앙 차고요 말이 표도 중앙 제나 짐바 동사 동계 동주 수tum 송사 송겐 송주 저바 송사 송겐 송주요 수저바데 아니 다 매베랑지 띵중기 대 코나니 시럽 표도 중앙에 든지 지용도 아니 디기 드브디기 아니 표도 중앙에서나 아니 동에 싸와니 매와 제텀니 대왕 바직 뒤다 넘바 꾼들라 아니 베테 찬주sem비 심지어 탐제라 아니 제 짭라나 매바 장구 뿡이 가져로다 침발라나 매바 째발라나 매바 nimbalana mebaji lewa inzang diki tonenda tsaachimbo shivu inzane diki chimbo tse goyade kechimbo rendowa tesonzang dindiki tumbu chungju zi nanga chungju zi tongba ina gom jabna jab hegiri kari gom karis gomri gomri temare kari gomri tengore semba zangbo semba changbo lagirwa ngazo namju semba zangbo changbo dizu di tseshin rediro di 아니 shedangi ngoda 아니 지 주제 신앙서부터 태와이나 코베드 매바 차르와 코베 되차왕 코 shedan왕 다 람산 차르고로와 네 마임바 시라피도 중앙 인지 피도 중앙데 여나 되니 땅에서라 동에 태와이나 강에 간데서 태와이나 내라 쇠베냠네 피도 중앙 아니 자기 말에 민지 콤베트 땅이야 인제다 쇠바다 시럽다 아니지 네가네 당돌려야마도 앞에 독자리에 되는 랑가지 남영 가게 말해 남영 수수기 안 셈바 슝게 말해 슝야기 시사요 말해 간신은 시럽 카체로 와 셈바 슝야한테 갈수는 좀 말해 강에 태와대 갈수 태와래 맞추지 짐바기 찡니 시럽대 카마시네 동의기 주직라 대화 당두지네 빠주 찡들어와 내는 찡 진짜는 한 찡도 그래 찡한테 줘발라 다음에 비랑신이 순간에 신 시럽 카드 세와이나 아니 수베냐네 어야 되니 잠바 제와 닝제 라야디 피도 중앙슬레 내 상말로와 내가 제사 낭미 침장 지수 자컵 코육 상만하라 제도야래 디지나 슈발라나 메바래 아니 강샤르 랑처 아니 진지 렉바통 실라네 한 강제와나 자침부지 통주와 대송장 가서 최대 낭배 최대 추진의 자침부지 데믹도게 마스나 아니지 띵용기 대코너니 시럽디 카세야당 아니 디기 띵네 문제 첨부 심지어 탐지를 뒤도 넘어가고 디니 데믹 디니여나 되는 가서 최치야 까야요 말이 참 수비 냠내 잔자리 동네 참말로와 되니 수수기 닌제 공배지 세바 공배지 제바 공배지 빼데 동네 레전이 푹푹 줘 말이 참말 시작균도 초보차 시작균 짜치보차 제 똑바 진지는 데라 빈닌지 사람이 버지인으로 랑라 네비 차와 짜니 메바 차래 되니 초보만 차러 산지 취 된지 임바다도
So I'd like to say at the beginning, I laugh because it stops me from falling asleep. All right, for some minute. So we talk of view and conduct and the implementation of the two. And so then, when we reflect, who is it that has the capacity or the ability to bring about a transformation of one's outlook? That is to say, perfect the view, if you like, and thereby perfect one's conduct or mode of interaction with the world, be it inanimate or animate. We can say, well, it's me. I'm a follower of the Buddha. But again, if we pause and look within, what is it that we have that allows this transformation to occur? And accordingly we talk of the precious human birth, don't we? The precious human experience. We're all very familiar. And perhaps we can rattle off the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments that characterize the precious human experience. But do we really appreciate that circumstance? So for example, when we look in the Lamrim, the graduated stages of the path to awakening, now regardless of one's kind of affiliation, whatever, regardless of the kind of tradition of Buddhism that we follow, the Lamrim is kind of universal. And we can talk of the precious human birth, its impermanence, reflecting on the general and specific dukkha nature, or suffering nature if you prefer, of the contaminated world, or samsara if you will, and understanding what brings it about of cause and action, cause and effect, and then understanding the way of kind of reversing that through relying upon qualified teachers. But we're all familiar with that, aren't we? As mentioned, whatever tradition we practice, each tradition has its own unique way of kind of talking about these very same things, putting the same things in different kind of ways. But what is important is to really kind of reflect upon what these things mean to us. We reflect upon the precious human experience and we say, yes, perhaps we ticked all the boxes, I have the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. But is this going to endure? And the simple answer is no. Why? Because that's not its nature. It's in the relative world. Its nature is change, impermanence. So it's not going to remain. If we really understand this, you might say from the very core of our being, then we'll not waste time. We have the ability to bring about the path within us, path meaning kind of realization within us, understanding, if you will, within us. This is afforded us by this precious human experience that we're now enjoying. But we have to take advantage of it, because it's not going to remain. If we reflect upon what it actually means to implement the Dharma, using, for example, teacher, our teacher. If we want to practice the path, we should look at somebody who embodies that. And so, if we approach them, we say, I've got this opportunity to practice, but I know it's not going to last. So we then ask for instruction. And the instruction is, indirectly at first, but ultimately leading to the way of overturning our addiction to this perceived independent nature of things. And this is something that is complete, we are able to rid ourselves of because this nature is in and of itself adventitious, it's temporary. It's not something autonomous. Accordingly then, we understand that what we call liberation simply means coming out from under the influence of this fiction. This is simply the nature of things. And if we take those instructions that we receive from our teacher to heart, then these instructions and our time, the time that we have left in life, if you will, then takes on a great meaning. Becomes beneficial, if you like. And the more we're able to engage the teaching of the Buddha, then the more meaning our precious experience, human experience, has. Why? Because we're using it to actualize the state of awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. But do we have the leisure to do that whenever we feel like it? No. Why? Because the nature of our experience is change. It is impermanent. And it can end at any time. At the moment, we enjoy the teaching of the Buddha, taught to us then by the qualified teacher. The ultimate expression of a qualified teacher then is the Buddha. But the Buddha, historical Buddha for example, is somebody who we didn't meet. But is it possible to meet somebody who embodies the qualities of awakening? And the answer to that is yes. Where, you may say? In the form of our teacher, our root teacher, who is none other than the victor, holder of the Vajra. In that personage, we meet the Buddha and receive instruction, perfect instruction, qualified instruction, valid instruction, if you will. And having understood how this teacher is valid, is perfect, etc., then our interest or our willingness to kind of bother to digest it will be so much deeper. But again, whilst we have the opportunity, it's best to, as they say, seize the moment. Why? We don't need to look far. In a way you could say, just look out of your window. Illness, sudden kind of climatical changes, clashes of the elements, etc. There are many factors that can shorten our lives. Just because we say the average lifespan is maybe 100 years, it doesn't mean that we are guaranteed 100 years. Through some slight change in condition, it is possible that we will pass away. And so what is important is to reflect upon ourselves and what we would really like to take away from this life. Because if we look at the actions of the world, we see that it's a lot to do with gathering things, whether they be kind of tangible or otherwise. The hankering after a name, reputation, for example, or the need to gather certain kind of material things around one. If that takes the lion's share of our time, we should really reflect on our commitment to the awakening of oneself for the benefit of all sentient beings. Because when we think that even if we have the riches of the pinnacle of existence, how much use is that when we pass away? Because we will go away empty-handed. Everything will be left behind. The goods will remain, and we will go on alone. And then here's the point. We may think, yes, but that's other people. But when we reflect on the average lifespan, even if we say it's 100 years, then 100 years from now we'll all be dead. But in the time we have remaining, we're all kind of followers of the Buddha, right? So how much progress can we actually make on the path whilst we are here? How much of, in a way, the essence of this precious human birth do we dare to extract whilst we are here? Well, this is something to really reflect about. Because the cleaning up of one's mind, if you like. And so here, it's important to reflect on the citation that all sentient beings are primordially awake. The difference between the awakened one and ordinary folk is whether these defilements have been removed or not. Remove all the adventitious defilements and the Buddha is there. What does this mean? It means that all sentient beings, each and every one of us, if you like, have this kind of, what is known as the kind of innermost subtle mind of natural luminosity, sometimes referred to as the Buddha nature. So all sentient beings have this. It is, in a way, our ultimate nature. Every sentient being, indeed, when you think sentient, the essence of sentience is this natural luminosity. And it is this natural luminosity, the natural, if you like, and some people like to call it the kind of self-arisen, self-manifest, but natural will suffice, this natural mind, the natural state of things, that is our nature. It is the rendering evident of this natural awareness that is our job, if you like. When we talk of the word, awakening in a way, means to clear up these adventitious defilements such that the natural quality of awakening can be rendered evident in the moment. If we understand that point, then the teaching of training the mind takes on a whole new meaning. We understand that the training of the mind, lojong in Tibetan, means simply to tidy up, to remove this adventitious defilement such that the innate qualities of awakening are rendered evident in the moment. Indeed, every teaching of the Buddha, we look at the 84,000 types of teaching. Why are there so many? Because beings are varied in their attitudes. But each and every one of those teachings was given with one reason in mind, to tidy up the kind of messy mind, if you like, to render evident the Buddha nature in the moment. So when we understand this point, we understand the real import of the Buddha. The Buddha was simply pointing out the means to render evident the awakened nature in the moment. So when we think again, sentience, sentient beings, so in a way, when we kind of interact with the world, we can see human beings, and we can see other animals. So let's just start there. what distinguishes, in a way, an animal than a human being? In a very kind of loose way, we can say, oh, the faculty of human intelligence. So in a way, it is important to recognize that by being born as a human, we have this human intelligence. And so, just having it and saying, okay, great, I've ticked that box, isn't enough. One should strive to put that into practice. What does it mean? It means to develop wisdom, to understand the nature of things, for that is all wisdom is. Simply to understand the nature of things. When one understands the ultimate nature of things, the ultimate truth, if you like, then the facade, the fiction, if you like, of the relative world collapses. And it's at that moment that a genuine compassion wells up from within. So this is what we should need to understand by wisdom and compassion. Generally we can talk of all kinds of wisdom, knowing something. And similarly we can talk of compassion in a relative way. It's not that difficult to see compassion in action, if you like. We meet people who are naturally empathetic and kind. But these understandings of things, this kind nature, etc., is temporary. It's not perfect. Within the relative world, we can similarly talk about engaging in certain activities, being charitable, for example. And we may say to ourselves that being charitable is the perfection of charity, but it isn't. There is a difference between charity and the perfection of charity. Within the perfection of charity, one understands the nature, the true nature of charity. Not being generous, of course, that is in the relative world the nature of being charitable. But here we're talking about what makes it the perfect action is understanding the mutual dependence between the person giving something, the receiver, and the object given. Thereby one understands there is no independent or autonomous act of charity. And the same is true for ethics, for joyful effort, for patience, for meditation, and so forth. Indeed, one needs to understand the mutual dependence of everything. When we understand the mutual dependence of everything, we understand the emptiness of everything. Because everything is interdependent. Through understanding the interdependence of everything, when we engage in these activities, such as, to mention again, the first 5 of the 6 perfections, patience, joyful effort, ethical conduct, meditation, and so forth. Understanding then the mutual dependence between the subject, the object, the person doing the action itself, and the object of the action. Thereby, we will be not only perfecting the action in the relative world, but also this will aid in the experience of the ultimate nature of things. And this then, through familiarity, is the way we bring about the path or realization of the ultimate within ourselves. So again, having a good heart is great, but understand that that is temporary. The genuine kind of compassion is one that wells up from within. It wells up from within the understanding, that is to say, the realization that is called wisdom. Understanding the nature of things. And this is something that is extremely important. For when we understand the nature of things, of course we're talking in the positive, engaging in positive actions and understanding the nature of them as we engage said actions. But understanding the nature of experience also helps us. Having this wisdom helps us engage with the world. Nothing becomes difficult if we understand its nature. Somebody giving us a hard time, we the recipient of that hard time, and perhaps the action that brings about the hard time. If we understand this mutual dependence, there is no tangible hard time. If there's no tangible hard time, why are we getting so upset? There's nothing to point to and say, oh, this is the hard time. So it helps us in the relative world. problems no longer become problems. Why? Because we see their nature. Seeing their nature, we are not then bound by this self-grasping. We're not bound by addiction. We become flexible. We become open. Within that openness, then the genuine patience, love, empathy, compassion, and so forth, well forth. And so then, our kind of, in the relative world, we can say that our work, our home life, they all become tangible in a way. We can kind of work with them. But most important for all of us, when we think of our practice of the Dharma, we always say obstacles, difficulties. But they become laughable. Why? Because we understand their nature. When we understand the nature of things, whatever we do then becomes the perfect conduct. So there's an expression that's used that is often translated as whatever arises is naturally freed. And what this means is no matter what the circumstance we find ourselves in, wherever we are, whomever we find ourselves with, etc., we remain through this understanding of the view, if you like, through having changed our outlook, we remain naturally free, no matter what the situation is. This then is the perfection, or the perfect implementation, if you like, of wisdom. When we have, as our experience, wisdom, we simply view then the nature of things as it is, mutually dependent. At that juncture, everything becomes the path, so to speak. On the relative level, the experience of dukkha is no longer really relevant because we simply understand the nature of things. We've come out, if you like, from under the bondage. We have kind of loosened the bonds, if you will, or the kind of tight kind of hold, if you like, that the self-grasping has upon us. And thereby, compassion naturally wells forth within us. This compassion that wells forth within the understanding of the natural state is a genuine compassion. This then is the highest conduct, the perfection, if you like, of conduct, as we strive in our perfection of wisdom and of conduct.
Lasso! 야, 나 가서 정말로 가지고 그러다. 능바. 자침보 조금만에 다 한다는 인중 찬스 양답에 따와야고 검 아소스 자빌라마 대바 다낭 이지야고 제 한자빌라마 군주스 디야고 스검 안디 군주스 자빌라마 저 이시 대발라야 돼양 아니 전주기쌤 돈이 따와고 뭐 아니 지르지라 당가서 자빌라마 스티르지레드레 군주스는 디르지레드레 디hin가서 남일루고 말해 이게 대화 이치체 아니 텐데지 고세링 아니 로 출런저가 진질라 출람든저가 진질로 람트바세와 진질로 트바 이시서 차로와 진질로 도베 다지 트바 진질로 덕지 진질 트바 진질로 군주섬지 진질라도 소 와서
And so all of us are kind of all of us are Buddhist, and it's imperative that all of us try to implement as much as we're able, so as to bring about an attitude of kind of going forth or renunciation, striving to awaken for the benefit of all sentient beings, Bodhicitta, and then this kind of correct outlook or kind of view. So sometimes these are called the three kind of principal aspects of the path to awakening. And then when it comes to meditation upon those things, it's important to trust the person that reveals them to us. And so we talk then in the kind of Buddhist technical language of having faith and devotion to our teacher, which we can also translate as kind of trust and a willingness or an openness to the practices that are prescribed thereby. So it's important then to develop this kind of trust, faith, kind of devotion, kind of openness to our spiritual teacher, to train as much as we're able in kind of pure view, and thereby, or there within actually, to develop kind of wisdom and compassion to the best of our ability. So this trust and kind of openness to the teacher is extremely important, because when we reflect upon what the teacher embodies, what the three jewels actually are in and of themselves, it is the union of emptiness and compassion. This, we've seen, is something that needs to be developed within ourselves, and these externals are merely the means then for us to develop them within. And so it's important then, if we are planning to practice this particular path or go in this particular direction, to have a kind of guide and to believe or trust in that guide, to have faith in them. And this is extremely worthwhile pursuit. So I encourage each and every one of you to, as much as you're able, practice that. And as a conclusion, I will make the supplication that our minds may turn towards the Dharma, that we may practice the Dharma as the path, that whilst practicing the path, any kind of confusion is naturally clarified, and then this confusion appears to us as wisdom. Thereby may we, each and every one of us, receive the blessing of the three rare and sublime ones.
Chanjo Zimjo Rinpoche, Maje Brahman Jeje, Jewa Nyamba Mevai, Kone Gundo Pevarajo, Donye Dawe Rinpoche, Maje Brahman Jeje, Jewa Nyamba Mevai, Kone Gundo Pevarajo, Jewa Tsuden Rinpoche, Maje Brahman Jeje, Jewa Nyamba Mevai, Kone Gundo Pevarajo, Jambe Bori Jidre Chemba Gundo Zambo Deyan Dijin, Tada Gunje Tamje Rabdo Mo Tuzo Shibe Jawa Tam Mo Kuno Chudo Mo Daji Kibe Zawa Digi Zambo Shije Rabdo Mo Chi. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Lesson.
Hold on. Rinpoche, phone not working. Thank you, Rinpoche. Thank you.